إياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. My dear brothers and sisters, I said this 2 weeks ago that we are gathered here today to do a bit of introspection and a bit of reflection. Over the last several weeks, the brothers and sisters at the Islamic Institute of Toronto have organized a series of programs to help us to reflect about what's happening across the global Muslim community and broadly to talk about what's happening across this globe itself. And there were some common themes if you look closely at the communities that we have looked into, and we've looked at Bangladesh, we've looked at Kashmir today, we looked at the Uyghur community, and we also last week looked at the Rohingyas. And there are some common themes that permeate these communities. The first one we talked a bit about was many of these communities are indigenous to those places. So when we talk about either driving them out or finding a new state for them, in the case of the Rohingyas, we mentioned last week that the Rohingyas, they're stateless people, despite the fact that they have inherited and lived in that part of Southeast Asia for a number of years. But they are stateless. Today we will hear that Kashmir is the most militarized zone in the world. And as Muslims, we have an obligation to think about this ummah as one community, as one body. And the Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to do that. So when one part of the body is hurt, the entire body feels the pain. So these programs over the last 4 weeks or so have meant to provide us with the ability to think about what's happening across the community and do some introspection. Think about what we can do as individuals and as community to support these brothers and sisters who have been persecuted for decades, if not centuries. So my brothers and sisters, I'd like to welcome you again. This is our final program in this series, and we hope, inshallah, we save the best for last. So we will begin, as we normally do, with Quranic recitation. And we have two Quranic reciters this evening. The first one is The first one is Sohan Zargar, and she will recite Surah Fajr, and then we have Aman Faruqi who will recite Surah Hajj. So if I can ask both Sohan and Aman to come to the podium, please.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات عماد الذين طغوا في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك صوت عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أكرمن كلا فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء والملك صفا صفا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي يومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. From the whole Quran, I chose Surah Al-Fajr because something that's happening in Surah Al-Fajr is happening right now in the world. So Surah Al-Fajr talks about two main people, Ad, Thamud, and Fir'aun. These three people were jealous of their power. They would show it off and they would use it in a wrong way. Fir'aun was a cruel king of Egypt. He would force everyone in Egypt to make statues of pharaohs, and whoever would refuse, he would kill them. And Ad and Thamud are two very muscular humans. They were really big, and they're real because, like in the Quran, they like mention it several times, and the scientists have also found a big skeleton in the area of the area that the Quran mentions that they lived in, and they would basically show off their power. Now, Fir'aun and Modi basically are compared together. Fir'aun killed many innocent lives. Modi is killing many innocent Kashmiri lives. Fir'aun uses his power in a wrong way. Modi is also using his power in a wrong way. Now Ad, Thamud compared to Modi. So Ad and Thamud, they showed off their power. Modi showed off his power for election when he wanted to show them that I'm very powerful and I can, and he sent 2 fighter jets to Kashmir. Thank you.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله يدافع عن الذين آمنوا. إن الله لا يحب كل خوان كفور. أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا وإن الله على نصرهم لقدير. الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم بغير حق إلا أن يقولوا ربنا الله ولولا دفع الله الناس بعضهم ببعض لهدمت صوامع وبيع وصلوات ومساجد يذكر فيها اسم الله كثيرا ولينصرن الله من ينصره إن الله لقوي عزيز. الذين إن مكناهم في الأرض أقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأمروا بالمعروف ونهوا عن المنكر ولله عاقبة الأمور. وإن يكذبوك فقد كذبت قبلهم قوم نوح وعاد وثمود وقوم إبراهيم وقوم لوط وأصحاب مدين وكذب موسى فأمليت للكافرين ثم أخذتهم فكيف كان نكير فكأي من قرية أهلكناها وهي ظالمة فهي خاوية على عروشها وبئر معطلة وقصر مشيد أفلم يسيروا في الأرض فتكون لهم قلوب يعقلون بها أو آذان يسمعون بها فإنها لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه من والاه. So just briefly, I'm going to describe or talk about the first two ayahs in the passage I recited. It's unfortunate to see what's happening right now in Kashmir. Innocent people are being killed, murdered, human rights violations are being committed, and many of us have family living in Kashmir. And we're worried about their access to supplies such as medication. We're worried about their safety, their health, and most importantly, their lives. So these are difficult times for us. It's not easy, it's stressful. But during times like these, it's important that we look in the Quran and Sunnah to see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to react with this, to see what the best way is to deal with this. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the first ayah, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُدَافِعُ عَنِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defends those who believe. And this is important, this is crucial for our hope. Why? Because it gives us hope, the power, the strength, and ability to endure and persevere through these times. So again, that is important for our hope, because we know that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us, we have nothing to fear, we have no one to fear. We tie our camel, we do our part, and we leave the rest of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the second ayah, and he concludes the ayah by saying, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ خَوَانٍ كَفُورٍ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like the unfaithful, the ungrateful. We have to be grateful for the bounties, the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us. And then in the next ayah he says, أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا, that permission has been granted to those who are being fought to fight back. And I'm just going to conclude with this. We have to do our part. We have to resist the oppression. If we're in that situation, if we're being killed, we're being fought, we have to fight back. Here in Canada, alhamdulillah, we're safe for now. We have more reasonable approaches that we should take. Raise the awareness, spread the message about what is going on. Whether it's through a social media post, an email, a text, whatever it is, raise the awareness and spread the message. Do it for your Muslim brothers and sisters. Do it for your family. Do it for your religion. I'll just conclude with this. We have to stand up for ourselves. We have to fight for ourselves. If we don't fight for ourselves, if we don't stand up for ourselves, then who will? So make sure you do your part. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, kathira, subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun.
And you can see it there.
Oh, okay.
So you have to do it that way. That's how they set it up.
Oh, I see. I thought this will be here. It's really okay.
Yeah, I can try to move it.
So is it after the prayer first me?
No, you're a bit down the list.
Oh, okay, no problem at all. Okay, that's fine. Okay.
But I actually need to be changing stuff, so I'll push it out.
Yeah, okay.
Afterwards, we'll pull it closer.
Yeah, I think that will be okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine?
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا واعتدلوا لصلاة رحمة الله سووا صفوفكم واعتدلوا علموا أن تسوية الصفوف من تمام الصلاة. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ومن يعتصم بالله فقد هدي إلى صراط مستقيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون. ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أفمن شرح الله صدره للإسلام فهو على نور من ربه فويل للقاسية قلوبهم من ذكر الله أولئك في ضلال مبين. الله نزل أحسن الحديث كتابا مثانية تقشعر منه جلود الذين يخشون ربهم ثم تلين جلودهم وقلوبهم إلى ذكر الله ذلك هدى الله يهدي به من يشاء ومن يضلل الله فما له من هاد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Yeah, mashallah, you guys did progress like 3 years ago. I hope that was good. How are you feeling today? Yo. I was surprised, mashallah, about both of them. First one, he seemed different. And then afterwards, when he started talking about him, and the second one came. Free slave. No, free slave. Because we all slaves. It's almost.
The lady sound though, eh? Like it's
Yeah, it's way better. Question, have you tried measuring your performance? No? Because, no, just counter that, yeah. Because of, mashallah,
Are you okay with it? All the views that's out there right now is this one here. So usually this is how it's shown. This is what's out, this is what's live, and this is what we're preparing. This is the preview. We used to do videos like that. No. You guys do it in GLA, like you have like switching. You did their podcast, right?
Yeah, but that was mostly just the sound, I guess.
No camera. So the system is like this, so I'll show you. These are the shots that you have here. This is what we call the preview. So the preview is basically what we're preparing in the next slide. So basically, if I was talking to you right now, so go fix the shot. And then, basically, if we want to change the lower third. Yeah, just the white double shot was good. So, like this, you went a little bit tighter, you have to move the lower third. Just a quick shot. Yeah, that was fine.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. If you finish praying, if I can kindly ask that you make your way to the seating area. We have a very interesting but a very tight program this evening, and we'd like to try and conclude around 8:15 or 8:30. So if I can ask the brothers and sisters, if you're finished praying, if you can kindly make your way to the seating area. There will be lots of opportunities to look at the display. So for those of you who have just joined us, I'd like to extend a warm and cordial welcome. This is our final program for Islamic History Month. Many of you who have been with us since the first Saturday in October would have noted that we began this journey starting with Bangladesh. Then we moved slightly up north to look at the Uyghur community. And then we moved back south to look at what's happening in Rohingya in Myanmar. And then we moved slightly west to look at today what's happening in Kashmir. Over the last several years, we've been running this program, and I think we've touched almost every continent on this globe, perhaps with the exception of Australia. So maybe next year, inshallah, we will try and touch that continent and have a program on Muslims in different parts of Australia. The intention, as I mentioned at the onset, is to try and engage the Muslim community, not only in understanding what's happening globally, but also to do some introspection and see what we can do as an ummah to help promote these various issues and causes happening across the globe. Our next speaker has been the constant in this program for a number of years. This individual has a unique combination of skills. He has a PhD in history from the University of Toronto, but he is also a graduate of the Islamic University in Medina, has been serving this community and the international community for decades. Sheikh Dr. Abdullah Hakim Quick has been instrumental in helping us among these programs, and we owe a tremendous gratitude to the work that he has done over the years in helping us realize this program. This is one of those scholars, one of those shuyukh, who not only come to the podium and speak, but also does a lot of work behind the scenes. Many of the displays that you see today in the gym and out in the lobby, he has been a big part of that. So my brothers and sisters, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Sheikh Abdullah Hakim Quick to speak for about 10 minutes or so on what's happening in Kashmir. Dr. Abdullah Hakim.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على سيد الأولين والآخرين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. All praise are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be constantly showered upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, his family, his companions, and all those who call to his way to the day of judgment. My beloved brothers and sisters, to our guests, especially to members of the deaf Muslim community, I begin with the greeting words of the righteous. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, it is another great opportunity for us in Islamic History Month to share information, to expand our consciousness. And this is the most important aspect of what we are doing. Because in this world today, as we have learned, one of the great obstacles to peace is ignorance. When people are ignorant of each other, the ignorance leads to fear, and fear leads to violence. And so when we bring knowledge, when we share our understanding and our lifestyle with other people, in a sense, we are working toward peace itself. In the Muslim community, we also suffer from distance, that we don't know each other. And so it is crucial for our community as well to begin to appreciate the cultures and traditions of other people who are part of the Muslim world. So this information that we are involved in tonight is what you could call information for transformation. So it is not just getting information to learn something and forget about it, but this information should help to transform us, to transform our understanding, and especially in this nation, the Muslim world at this point in time, it is critical for us to have a strong relationship with other believers, regardless of color, regardless of language, regardless of ethnicity. And Allah tells us in Surah Al-Anfal, verse 73, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوهُ تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ. Allah tells us that as for those who disbelieve, some of them are guardians of others. If you do not do this, there will be persecution in the land and great corruption. And so Allah says, Ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd. It speaks about awliya. This is a word that has many meanings. But some of the meanings of awliya are very important to us. A person who is your wali is a person who is not just your friend, not just a relationship, but a wali is a protector. A wali is a guardian. A wali is a benefactor. A wali is a supporter. So Allah uses the plural, awliya. And so Allah said, if we are not supporters, protectors, benefactors of each other, there would be great persecution in the land. There would be great corruption. And we are witnessing this persecution now, spreading throughout the world, not only the Muslim world, all parts of the world, but especially the Muslim world. And this is another area, this is another case where we can see the result of not being guardians and protectors and supporters of each other. And so, in trying to understand this area, this month we looked at Muslims who were traveling in early times, right after the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, carrying the message of Islam on the oceans, following the monsoons. And we followed it all the way over to Bangladesh, to Arakan, the land of the Rohingya. We understood that Islam had reached way to Indonesia and even into Australia and many parts of the world. But we also learned that Muslims in early times responded to the attacks that were given, that came upon them. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he sent letters to the kings. He did not send armies. Islam was not spread by the sword. He invited them to Islam. But some of the kings, especially the Persian king of the Sassanid dynasty and the Roman emperor, they responded with violence. They attacked the Muslims. And so therefore, Muslims had to defend themselves. And they also had to call to the good and forbid evil. And the Roman Empire fell. The Persian Empire fell. And when this happened, Muslims realized that the people living under these two superpowers were terribly oppressed. So they began to open up territories controlled by these empires. And so far to the east, they continued to go. And we found out that in the time of the Umayyad dynasty, and we remember after the Prophet ﷺ was the rightly guided caliphs, Al-Khulafa al-Rashidun, and then there was the Umayyad dynasty, and then the Abbasids. We learned that in the Umayyad period, that Muslims began pushing back forces of oppression, and Muhammad bin Qasim, rahimahullah, entered into the Sindh. He started moving the Muslims east, and Qutayba ibn Muslim al-Bahili also started to move the forces of Islam. And they reached into the area of Khorasan. When they reached Khorasan, as we have learned with the Uyghurs, they found an amazing society not known to many people in the world. And they continued east. But it started to go up into the mountains. And so it is reported the Umayyads never entered the mountains of the Kashmir Valley. They did not go that high up. They stopped in the area of Khorasan, and it was later on that not armies that went into the Kashmir Valley, but it was mystic scholars who went in, the great Sufi scholars. And Sharafuddin Abdurrahman Sahrawadi, he is probably one of the early people who went into this valley. They used to call him Bulbul Shah. I love that name, because a bulbul in Arabic means somebody who can talk really well, a good communicator. So they called him Bulbul Shah. And he spread Islam. He impacted onto the people. After this, Mir Sayyid Ali Hamdani, who came from Hamadan in Persia, a great leader, mystic, scholar, came into the area and had a profound influence. And his influence was not just spirituality, he also influenced the people, as many historians say, in culture, industry, and economy, encouraging the people in shawl making, in carpet making, in clothing, weaving of cloth. And this encouragement is the holistic approach to Islam. And he found in that valley a very sensitive people, highly intelligent people, who were tied to the land and could express themselves in their arts. And so these are the people that we are looking at tonight. Alhamdulillah, one of our groups that has been next to us all the way through, but again, we don't know each other good enough. And so, alhamdulillah, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would bless this community, and we thank them for coming here tonight and giving us the opportunity to stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Kashmir. And we pray that Allah Azza wa Jal would give them victory from their oppressors and would liberate this land and return it to being a beautiful area of Islamic culture. And if you can't do anything else tonight, make dua and drink some Kashmiri tea. You will never forget it, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sheikh Abdullah Hakim. The only thing with the tea is I understand that they put some tea in the sugar. Brothers and sisters, part of our program is to try and mix it up a bit. We started with Quranic recitation. We got a historical context by Dr. Sheikh Abdullah Hakim Quick. And now we'll have a traditional song. And the nasheed will be by Sohan, Huda, Anabiya, and Safiya. So I hope that there they come.
They're going to do a nasheed Mustafa.
Mic is not.
Okay.
This one there.
It's okay. It's ready.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's looking so cool. It's okay, you guys are fine.
Mustafa, Mustafa, Mustafa.
You're the guide sent by Allah to lead us towards the light. You're the guide sent by Allah to lead us towards the light. Allahumma salli ala Mustafa. Allahumma salli ala Mustafa. Mustafa, Mustafa, Mustafa. Mustafa, Mustafa, Mustafa. Jazakallah.
Brothers and sisters, we will now look at a short video which will highlight the current crisis in Kashmir. So we'll tee the video up and then we will get into one of our main speakers.
Sorry. One more video. Right.
So, brothers and sisters, we'll now move on to one of the main speakers for this evening. And Dr. Idrisa Pandit will talk about Kashmir resistance over time. So I'll invite Dr. Pandit to come to the podium.
Assalamu alaikum. I have limited time, so I'm going to race through this. Thank you to everyone who invited us to be here. It's a very difficult time for Kashmiris, and to be able to participate in an event like this takes tons of energy. So kudos to everyone who prepared and was willing to share with the larger community. And also thank you to IIT for hosting us and for also creating an awareness about the history of all our collective peoples. Sheikh Quick has already made my job a little bit easier by framing this part of our sharing together. So I stand here before you as a native Kashmiri. I was born and raised in Kashmir. And Sheikh Quick mentioned the initiation of Islam in Kashmir via a couple of the Sufi saints that he mentioned. I also happen to be, or my grandmother was a direct descendant of Mir Sayyid Ali Hamdani, so I take great pride in that. What you just witnessed in those chants are the chants of freedom that have been ringing across Kashmir for generations. And currently, we're sort of at the apex of this movement. But I think what I would like to do very quickly tonight is put it in a context that what is happening right now is not something that is very sudden and disconnected with our history that is long-standing. So the struggle for freedom of Kashmir, or the resistance struggle in Kashmir, has a very long history, hundreds of years. But most often what happens is people are very unaware of what Kashmir is or where it is. So just to very quickly give you an overview, what you see this map that I borrowed from BBC. Kashmir is a territory that is currently divided and in two primary parts. 65% of the territory is under Indian occupation, the rest is under Pakistani control, and portions of it, which is the glacial portions of our territory, such as the Siachen Glacier, and rest of what you see in light gray, is under Chinese control. A few facts about the history of Kashmir, because often again, people tend to think of Kashmir as part of India or part of Pakistan and so on and so forth. Kashmir is a disputed territory. And when I say disputed territory, as per international law, Kashmir is disputed, recognized by the United Nations, and it is supposed to be on the books to be resolved with the help of the will of the people, an express will of the people, which is called the right of self-determination. And it's that right that the Kashmiris have been fighting for a very long time, for 72 years in this particular instance, but of course it goes way back as well. So to remember that it is not a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan, and it is, as the Sheikh mentioned earlier, or somebody else did, the most militarized zone on earth. The history of occupation, what is, in summary, basically, since India has been controlling the part of Kashmir on the Indian side, it has been unable to govern Kashmir peacefully and has basically used very repressive, illegal force and subjected Kashmiris to gross human rights violations that people have already talked about. And the reason for that is that the Indian Army operates within that territory with absolute impunity, which means that they can commit rape, murder, and do whatever they want, and they will never be held responsible for that. And that's very unique and very important to bear in mind. In the last 30 years, close to 100,000 people are dead, thousands have disappeared, thousands have been tortured, blinded, and raped, and continues to be so. So when I say militarization with impunity, just very quickly to give you a bit of statistics, and so this is, again, enabled by some of the laws that the Indian government has instituted, which are very special to that particular territory, that protects its military, that can enforce illegal means to continue the oppression of the people. What is happening now is important. Because of the changes that occurred on August 5th, India has basically occupied and annexed, well, it was already occupying, but it has now annexed the territory, changed the nature of the territory, altering the nature of the international disputed territory of Kashmir. So the problem as it stands in the United Nations has suddenly been unilaterally changed by the occupying force. And what is also happening, which is more dangerous and important for us to recognize, especially as Canadians who are on a territory as settlers, a similar settler colonial project is beginning to unfold in Kashmir, which means now people have access to the land and resources of Kashmir, which was earlier protected until August 5th. Although the special provisions that protected the region had already been watered down to a considerable extent, but people could not come and buy and live there. So now, people meaning anyone who was not a resident of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And as a result, what has happened since August 5th is a complete suspension of fundamental human rights, denial of basic rights to life, liberty, food, education, and expression. And there is also, important to note, a complete clampdown on journalists. And it's important to note because, in spite of that, the brave journalists of Kashmir, with all of the difficulties that they have been subjected to, have been able to get some stories out, which is how we know about what is happening in Kashmir. And as you might know, there are no international journalists permitted to enter Kashmir, nor are any human rights organizations allowed to make an assessment on their own. So, because this is about history and this is about Islamic History Month, I just very quickly want to give you an overview of the cultural syncretism of Kashmir. Kashmir has traditionally and historically been an independent kingdom for hundreds of years, with a very rich history that dates back all the way to the Neolithic times. Those of you who are Kashmiri, Burzahom might ring a bell, so it goes all the way back to 3500 BC. An attraction for various invaders because it is famed for its natural beauty. As the Sheikh earlier mentioned, the Muslims did attempt in the 8th century to enter Kashmir, but because of the terrain, which is very mountainous, they did not succeed, so they went around the mountains. However, they did arrive 5 centuries later, and essentially the success of the Muslims began with the conversion of one of the Buddhist generals from Ladakh, which is the adjoining territory, converting to Islam under Bulbul Shah, the Nightingale Shah of Kashmir, the first Sufi who brought Islam to Kashmir. And since then, about for 700 years, it was ruled by the Shahmir dynasty. It was not until the 15th century that the majority of Muslims became Muslims. Prior to that, there were Hindus and Buddhists. Hinduism and Buddhism flourished, not only flourished, but in fact, Kashmir became a main center of learning for both of those faiths. Those of you who might be familiar with Buddhism to a certain extent, some of the important Buddhist councils, early Buddhist councils, were held in Kashmir. The first encounter of Kashmiris with other Central Asian nations, as was also mentioned earlier, especially with regard to handicrafts and other things, that engaged them in some sort of a cultural exchange with other nations in the Central Asian nation, happened under the reign of one of the Shahmir dynasty kings, known as Zainul Abidin, who was also very, very tolerant. But the dynasty really met its decline soon after Zain al-Abidin's death. And then entered the Mughals, and all of you must be familiar with the Mughal Empire, and arrival of Akbar in the 16th century. Unfortunately, he was not very kind to us Kashmiris. He exiled our king, and we still don't know. In fact, his grave was recently discovered in a remote part of India. And he was married to a very famous poet mystic of Kashmir, a woman by the name of Habba Khatun, who is our national poet, shall we say, and at that time was the reigning queen. And after they exiled our king, the queen went mad and literally started roaming the streets, singing her poetry and staying with one of the Sufi saints and loitering from place to place. And her grave was only found about 50 years ago in Kashmir, or at least it's supposed to be her grave, we don't really know. As I said earlier, Mughals, like others, were always attracted to Kashmir, one for its natural beauty and other resources, and Mughals in particular left a lot of history behind, architectural history behind. So what you will see when you go to Kashmir are the famed Mughal gardens, and always trying to replicate the image of paradise as the Quran tells us it is supposed to be, through their famous gardens that they established and instituted all over Kashmir. Jahangir's famous saying, if there is paradise on earth, it is here, is quite well known. After the decline of the Mughal Empire in the 18th century, we have the Afghans that come in to Kashmir for a short period, but one of the deadliest periods in Kashmir's history, unfortunately. So Kashmiri nobles invite Ahmad Shah Durrani, the brutal ruler of Afghanistan, to supposedly liberate the country from the Mughals, but in the end, what happens is that this ruler doubles the taxes, persecutes the Shia minority community with fanatical vigor, and creates a lot of discontent within the community itself. And so 50 years of Afghan rule was constantly punctuated with clashes between the Shias and Sunnis in Kashmir. The worst period of the history begins right after the 50 years of the Afghan rule, with the entry of the Sikh ruler Ranjit Singh, who was one of the charismatic Sikh rulers, and he takes over the city without any resistance. And the 27 years of the Sikh rule is also supposed to be one of the worst periods in Kashmir's history of oppression. Jamia Masjid, you saw the pictures when the Sheikh was speaking, at that time was completely closed, and many other mosques were made the property of the state. That's when cow slaughter, which still continues to be the practice in Kashmir, unfortunately, was banned, and very heavy taxes levied. So what happened as a result, there was a lot of cultural movement within Kashmir during the time of the Shamir dynasty, as well as during the Mughal period. But most of the people then started migrating and leaving Kashmir around that time, and many of them ended up in places like Amritsar, Lahore, Rawalpindi, which then sort of became centers of Kashmiri culture. So the modern period of the Kashmir brutality really is the one period that we often talk about, as if the oppression of Kashmir really began in 1947 as a result of partition of India and Pakistan. Unfortunately, yes, Kashmir is a victim of that very bloody partition, but it begins with the East India Company, which acquires Kashmir. You all know the East India Company. It's all about capitalism at that time. The British, as they come into India, and they acquire Kashmir as a prize in the first Anglo-Sikh war under the Treaty of Amritsar. And what happens is British don't want the territory, so they very quickly sell it to a Dogra ruler, who was the ruler of an adjoining territory called Jammu, for a pittance. So land and people, we all got sold for literally $160,000. And this particular period, again, was one of the worst for the Kashmiris, and not only in terms of the taxation, but also in terms of how the peasantry and local community was brutalized, especially the system of Begar, which is bonded labor. Sadly, in 2019, the Indian Army has again tried to institute the system of bonded labor currently as we speak. So what they're doing right now is taking young men off the streets, it doesn't matter who you are, and asking you to do free labor for them, especially building the very same torture camps in which then they torture the same people. Muhammad Iqbal, Sir Muhammad Iqbal, most of you probably know of him as the poet of the East, as the philosopher of the East. He is supposed to have visited and written about Kashmir. He says, basically reflecting that the brilliant craftspeople of Kashmir produce the finest of shawls that cover the bodies of the aristocrats, yet their own naked bodies, are they're unable to cover them because of the impoverished state of the people of Kashmir. By 20th century, though, it was very difficult to continue this level of oppression. The spark of revolution had sort of already been ignited in a way. So that's really when a movement against the oppression of Kashmir takes root. The first start of resistance that you would say you could formally notice as a way of resisting was a strike in 1924 at the state-owned silk factory. Those of you who are from Kashmir and have not visited the old silk factory, you should go see it. It's really quite a fascinating place. So the workers who produced silk in that silk factory went on a strike protesting against the administration as a way of disapproving the oppression at that low level, but it really took on a much larger meaning. And when they were oppressed and crushed, some of the nobles of Kashmir then wrote to the British Viceroy complaining about how the movement was suppressed. And the Maharaja, the Dogra Maharaja, when he found out about it, he used that as an excuse to further oppress them. And he really tried to start torturing many of the leaders of the movement. And the one who led the movement at that time was exiled and deported. And others were labeled as sedition mongers. And it's again very pertinent for us to recognize the connections between what was happening in 1924 in that silk factory in Kashmir and what is happening now. 2 days ago, very sadly, very, very prominent Kashmiri resistor, S.A.R. Gilani, suddenly passed away. Now, this man exemplifies the resistance movement of Kashmir, because in his life, this man suffered for false accusations. He was incarcerated and tortured. He's an academic. He was a professor in Delhi University. They tortured him. They accused him falsely. They almost hanged him. But because of the position he was in and the civil society movement against the charges, the false charges, he was finally acquitted. Then he was again charged with sedition in 2016 for protesting or lodging a protest against the false accusations against a person called Afzal Guru, who unfortunately was hung by the Indian administration. But this sedition mongering is a very serious charge. So this young man who just passed away 2 days ago passed supposedly a natural death. And as soon as he was taken to the hospital, the Indian administration comes in and takes over control of his dead body. So if I can't say anything to you to explain to you what oppression looks like for Kashmiris, the fundamental fact is we have no right to life, but we also don't have any right to death anymore. And they seized his body, kept it against the wishes of the family in the heat. As you know, we like quick burials. They wanted the body to be flown to Kashmir, prevented the body from going to Kashmir, and insisted on doing an autopsy when the family said there is absolutely no need. But all of that harassment that this young man, this revolutionary resistor, had endured throughout his life, he even had to endure it in his death. And this resistance, therefore, continues. Nothing changes as, successor of Dogra regimes come in. And it is during the time of Hari Singh that the condition of the Muslims of Kashmir was really pathetic. It had been throughout the Dogra regime. Although we have a very small minority of Kashmiri Hindus, but they were always the powerful minority who just ruled over the Muslims who happened to be in a very large majority. And being in those prestigious positions, they held a lot of power over the Muslim populace. In fact, the laws that were changed on August the 5th were instituted to please this minority Hindu community, because they feared that if others come in who may, especially as they were seeing the Kashmiri Muslims becoming more and more educated, then they might take some of the prestigious positions. As fate would have it, now they're celebrating and very happy about scrapping of these laws when they were the ones who were responsible for their institution in the very first place. So 1931, if we are talking about resistance in the modern era, really is that year that marks the beginning of Kashmiri resistance, where there were murmurings of sedition all around. And there was a khutbah going on in a mosque in Jammu. And during the khutbah, the imam was mentioning the story of Pharaoh and Moses. Oh my goodness, okay. Well, I won't tell you the interesting story. But even speaking during the khutbah turned into charges of sedition. And so mass protests, occurred for the first time in the history of Kashmir. Mass protests took place, and people decided that they were going to elect a body of representatives that would then speak on their behalf. So it was like the beginning of that awareness, and you might be familiar with the name Sheikh Abdullah, who was one of the young Muslim-educated, leaders of that time, or was appointed sort of as a leader by the masses. A trial takes place of one of the speakers, and people protest during the trial. As a result, the forces of the Maharaja open fire and they kill 21 people. So to this day, we mark July 13th, 1931 as our Martyrs' Day. I will just quickly basically tell you that 1947 and what happened with regard to partition and how India and Pakistan came into the picture basically is the unfinished business of the British. Kashmir was a princely territory, and they had the right to decide to either go to India or Pakistan or to stay independent. But although the majority of the population was Muslim, the ruler was Hindu, he had other leanings, and a great deal of machinations on the part of the first Indian Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, who had Kashmiri lineage, impressed upon the Maharaja to try to, say yes in favor of India, but all of that was done very, very deceptively. The so-called instrument of accession, which the Indians claim is the document that makes Kashmir, a part of India, or at least that Kashmir acceded to their territory temporarily, in itself was done in deception, and we don't have time to go through that. Ultimately, India takes the issue to the United Nations and asks them to intervene, and the issue becomes an issue of self-determination, which 72 years later, it still is there because no action has taken place. The fundamental issue right now is India's claim that somehow the portion that is under their control is integral part of their territory, whereas Pakistan currently, that was not their position before, but currently under Imran Khan, their position has changed dramatically, and they're saying, no, we recognize this as an international dispute, which must be resolved by the will of the people. India, on the other hand, is quite intransigent in their stance, and they're not willing to allow people to express their will. I will not show you anything else or go anywhere, but I was going to tell you a little bit about what the resistance looks like from the perspective of women, because one of the charges that the Indian government lays currently against Kashmiris is discrimination against women, although if you look at stats and numbers, Kashmiri women fare far better than women anywhere in the subcontinent, and they have had the rights that the Indian women never did until very, very recently. But just to, to sum up, basically the impact of the violence in Kashmir has taken a huge toll on everybody, but especially on women. But just in case you're left with the impression that women are these silent recipients, that is really not true. And resistance really, is occurring every single day. And women have been resisting in multiple ways as advocates, leaders, social change makers, peacemakers, writers, and artists. I've conducted a study, and in my research, asking young people, why do they resist? And why nonviolent resistance? And it's really important for us to acknowledge the reasons why people want to resist. The young man earlier reminded us that if that's the least we could do, if we can't physically be present, but at least become aware and speak about it. These are some of our matriarchs, who protect the men right in the streets when soldiers come and attack. You have girls everywhere, including college and school children. These young women particularly I want to honor, because these young women were responsible for reopening a mass rape case, a gang rape case that India tried to silence us about. And they ended up writing this book. Do you remember Kunan Poshpura, a place where even 80-year-old women got raped, a place that I have visited and documented. It's a grave tragedy. But the bravery of these young women to open that is their form of resistance. This mother, her name is Parveena Hangar. She was nominated for the Nobel Prize, and deservedly so. Her son, at the age of 19, disappeared, just like 8,000 others who have just disappeared in thin air and continue to be disappeared right now. And she, as an illiterate woman, has led a worldwide movement, but particularly in Kashmir, she has established an association of the disappeared, parents of the disappeared people. So this woman is our hero. This is another woman who has been actively participating and involved in the mass resistance movement, and I will end it here. I know people are getting quite edgy. Thank you for being patient. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Idrissa, for that very informative lecture. And also, I think the emphasis on women is quite important for us to understand and demystify some of what's happening and some of the information coming out of that part of the world. Our next speaker is Brother Farouk Lone, and he will speak about Islam in Kashmir.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الدين عند الله الإسلام صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسول النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. I think my task has been made very easy by Sheikh, and another side is Dr. Idrissa. So I'll just quickly just give you an idea how Islam it reached Kashmir. Historically, Kashmir has three major religions, and it was Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. According to a popular mythology account, earliest people of the land are known as Nagas, or the snake worshippers, which you can see still in India. Buddhism achieved preeminence and remained the religion of Kashmir for over a millennium until it was destroyed utterly by militant Hinduism. For its natural splendor, Kashmir has always remained an object of greed and desire for conquerors and consequently a target of external aggression and occupation. We are seeing the glimpses of that occupation. We have seen it before. We have seen it in the past. We are seeing it now. And we are seeing is also what's going to happen in the future. How the Buddhism came to Kashmir. About 300 BC, Buddhism arrived in Kashmir from the further south of India and started to flourish in the region. Buddhism proposed a much less structured, more egalitarian society who believed in the equality of everyone. This is probably why it spread so quickly in Kashmir once it was introduced there in the mid-7th century. The famous Chinese Buddhist scholar Hugh Sang traveled to Kashmir and found more than 100 Buddhist temples in the city of Srinagar. This is the map of Kashmir. When you see one side the Ladakh, at the moment you can see there are Buddhists in Ladakh, but there are also Muslims. The population ratio is around 40-60. Hinduism in Kashmir. Hinduism has been the predominant religion in Kashmir for centuries. An important feature of Hinduism in Kashmir was the caste system. All Hindus belonged to a certain caste, which you can think as a social class. They're called Brahmins, and they used to discriminate people based on the color and their occupation. And the Brahmins, they have always hold the dominance on the others. That's what they used to prosecute those people who belong to the lower caste. And also they used to prosecute the Buddhists as well there in Kashmir. So in the 9th century, a Persian Muslim traveler, Buzarg ibn Shahryar, recorded in his Travelogue, The Wonders of India, that the Hindu king in Kashmir has ordered for the Quran to be translated into the Kashmiri language. And by the 12th century, we find mention of Muslims surviving in the royal courts and army of the Kashmiri Hindu king Harshadeva. In 1319, the Mongol warlord Zulcha invaded Kashmir and spent 8 long months making bloody mess in Kashmir. He massacred thousands of Kashmiri men, enslaved them, women and children, and razed entire towns to the ground. Zulcha was, after all, a direct descendant of Genghis Khan and the grandson of Hulagu Khan, who in 1258 had similarly destroyed Baghdad and brought the Abbasid Empire to an end. In fact, it is only the late 13th and early 14th century that we even find the first recorded Muslim preacher in Kashmir, a Sufi named Sayyid Sharifuddin Abd Abdurrahman, but remembered as Hazrat Bulbul Shah, as the Sheikh was mentioning about him earlier. He studied in Baghdad and then traveled widely, first through Central Asia and then to the Kashmir, where he arrived in 1295 during the reign of the last Hindu king of Kashmir, Raja Suhadev. After a brief stay in Kashmir, he left but returned almost after 30 years later, this time possibly with some of his disciples. A Buddhist, Ranjan Shah, has been described by a historian as an inquisitive and alert young man fond of the company of learned men. He would spend hours with Buddhists and Hindu priests discussing religion matters, but he rarely in India when the Dalits are being discriminated based on their caste, and that glimpses are still there. He saw Bulbul Shah performing the Fajr dawn prayer in the banks of the river Jahlam. He went out to meet this man and eventually started to learn about Islam from him. He was so impressed by the teachings of Islam, which were simple, free from useless ceremonies, caste, and priesthood, that in 1323 he accepted Islam and changed his name to Malik Sadruddin. Bulbul Shah found a home on the banks of the river Jahlim and spent the rest of his life in Kashmir, in the heart of Srinagar, and also built 2 mosques nearly from this Khanika, means from this where he is. Bulbul Shah delivered lectures for many years, and many of his students played a role in spreading Islam further in the Kashmir and beyond. In 1327, Bulbul Shah passed away as well and was buried in Srinagar, where his shrine is still visited today. But before he passed away, Bulbul Shah made one of his outstanding disciples, Mullah Ahmad, responsible for continuing preaching activity in Kashmir. Ahmad was soon to become the first Islamic scholar. This is Bulbul Shah, where he is buried, and it's in Srinagar. Many other Kashmiri leaders, notably Ravan Chadara, soon followed. More low-caste Hindus and Buddhists started to embrace Islam during this time as well, convinced that it would free them from the remaining shackles of the Buddhism. It is said that Bulbul Shah was thus ultimately responsible for the conversion of 10,000 Kashmiri Hindus into Islam. After several years of political struggle, Malik's chief minister Shah Mir came to power in 1339, rebranding himself as Sultan Shamsuddin. He consolidated Muslim rules in Kashmir, part of his involvement appointing Mullah Ahmad as Sheikhul Islam, chief religious authority of Kashmir. Ahmad wrote many works, including Fatwa-i-Sahaba, a compendium of Islamic fiqh jurisprudence. Then came from Persian, we call him Shah Hamdan, and he also played a very important role in Kashmiri society, where he was not only preaching, as Dr. Idrisa, she already mentioned, that he also taught people the weaving and other, industrial equipments, how they can use them, and also how they can, spend their day-to-day life and earn some livelihoods there. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Brother Farouk. We'll now have a poem by Rimsha Ahmad.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Rimsha Ahmad. I'm Kashmiri by origin, and I immigrated to Canada when I was about 13. Now I am a mom to 3 little kids who I am teaching about Kashmir and the history. I'm also a spoken word poet, so this is something that... Okay, sorry. Is that better? Okay, got it. So I'll just start the poem. Pain runs in my veins. It's not blood anymore. It's volcanoes sitting dormant, building, expanding, a little each moment. A little unsure when it all will break, and I fight. Wails upon wails, stages upon stages, scripts you hear, scripts I repeat, and I fight. Breathless. Breath escapes nerves. Nerve endings feeling endless, nervous energy endless. Smile, stop, go. Pacing, breath, step, touch. Pacing endlessly, blink, tears sitting on the edge. Fighting to escape prison cells, currents, waves, prisoned endlessly. Endless, struggle to escape. And I fight. Blink, gasp, breath is my enemy. Heart aches, arms are numb, but I fight. Silence, now smile. It matters not what you feel. Silence, they say, now smile. Your words don't mean a thing. Another day, another massacre, another bloodbath, another murder. Monsters roam the streets where kids once played. Skies bleed red. Broken bodies, broken, bent bodies. Insomnia, awake, not woken. Tired eyes, tired soul, nightmares over and over. But I fight. These silent smiles, they kill each thought that fights for words. How long do you commit murder and not feel a thing? How long do you stay shut and keep the peace? The peace you constantly mistake for quiet. The quiet you always think is peace. Grenades blow. Frozen valley moves with floods. Painted smile washed out. Suffocation swelling, cocooned in darkness, fears of tomorrow holding hostage this faith. Elastic soul wrapped around, resilient, adapting with gratitude for all that is, for all that will be. Freedom on the horizon, so watch me fight. Hands raised in devotion to the sanctity of life, screams in my heart, songs under my tongue, awake, asleep, again I fight for you, for me, these nights, these days. A battle I win, I lose, so each moment I fight. For you, I fight for me, hidden in the light. Afraid of dreams, nightmares are a blessing. Freedom awaits and I fight. I fight, I fight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Ramsha. That was indeed very, not only heartwarming, but also well rendered. We'll now have a brief comment by Brother Samir Mansoor, so I'll invite Brother Samir to the microphone.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I got this opportunity to speak about Kashmir from my eyes. I didn't see much for the younger people who I call the future, the more powerful people. And so I thought of, oh, here, the clicker. Yeah.
Check if it works.
Oh. Yeah, it works. Thank you. So I thought of trying to get my talk to be able to connect with the younger people who I believe is the future. You guys are awesome. The future Muslims, the future leaders of the world. So, it's kind of shaky. I'm going to try not to touch. I don't think it's me. That's okay. Don't worry about it. I don't have any text on my slides, and so you guys shouldn't have a lot of trouble. So I wanted to start with, I'm a guy, and as men, you guys might know that we don't have really beautiful clothes like women do. So we can't really show off our culture as well. But what we can do, or at least what I do, and what some of my cousin brothers do, is we buy some of these handicraft things, like little things that when people come, they see, oh, this is a carpet. Oh, and then you get to talk about Kashmir, yeah, we're fighting for our freedom, and this is some of the stuff that we make. And so a lot of people, they'll have small trinkets from Kashmir. So whenever we go on vacation to Kashmir, our bags will be filled on the way back with just these little trinkets or little carpets. You guys probably have seen this. It's a wall hanging. I don't know anyone who doesn't have one. I have one too at home. And as Sheikh Abdul Hakim Quick, I remember the quick part. as Sheikh Abdul Hakim Quick and Dr. Adisa Pandit talked about Shah Hamdan, this mystical Muslim who preached Islam in Kashmir, he also brought with him a lot of this art from Kashmir, and he was able to engage a lot of Kashmiris to do highly skilled artisan work, and we still see the effects of it. So all the stuff that you will see, and a lot of these dresses that you will see around here, are all handmade. And so, it's just something that we like to show, and something that you can buy and support local people over there. There's a lot of talk about sustainability. Oh, this has been sustainably sourced, and stuff from Kashmir is obviously sustainably sourced. I think it's kind of shaky. As you will see over here, as you would have seen before it went away, that this artisan stuff really looks good even in your house. If it's a modern house, if you wear jeans or modern clothes, the clothes, the stuff actually matches stuff in your house. So you should definitely support people over here. So family. Oh, by the way, I don't know if anyone's seen, there was a Hillary Clinton was wearing a dress that was made by Kashmir artisans that were hand sewn. So, and also for the women, there are a lot of gold artisans there. So if you take them a design or you show them something online, they'll just make it for you in gold, and it's pure gold. It doesn't have impurities. So family for me is very important, as it might be for a lot of people over here. My parents live in Kashmir right now, and one thing that is interesting is that almost every Kashmiri will be related to each other. So, and the Kashmiris will be nodding their heads right now because they know how true it is. So if you go to a city and you go to the masjid, and someone asks you, where are you from? You're I'm from Kashmir. And then they'll be like, oh, there's this Kashmiri brother over here. Every Kashmiri is going to ask what that person's name is. They'll be like, oh, what's his name? And then you'll be like, Hamid. And you'll be like, no, what's his last name? Hamid can be anyone. And then it'll be like, Hamid Mir or something. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm probably related to that guy. And you definitely have at least 1 or 10 mutual friends on Facebook. You just look them up. And so family's really important to Kashmiris. And at any gathering where there's strangers who meet, they will talk about, they will try to find out how they're related to each other. I don't think other people do it as much. I think Palestinians do it too, but at a gathering, that's what Kashmiris talk about. And then one thing that I wanted to talk about is really emphasize on how important, how close Kashmiris are together. So my grandma passed away recently in July. May Allah have mercy on her. And within 2 hours of her passing away, they got her body from the hospital. There were at least 100 relatives in our house. And it was a weekday and everyone had stuff to do, but everyone left everything they were doing and just, came to this place. So, like, they could have, when I see it in, I lived for a lot of years outside of Kashmir, I never saw that much of an urgency in family. And over the next 3 days where people come to pay respects, there were at least 1,000 people that passed by. And I was just so happy to see everyone. There were these people that I hadn't seen for so many years, but I was seeing again. I had seen in a different country, and they heard about my grandmother and they came to visit just because, my grandmother had passed away. Like, they were not related to her, but because, I knew them from 10 years ago, they came and, visited. And so it was really difficult to be sad in that moment. People, if you meet a friend from 20 years ago, you just want to go and, hug them and, talk about like how they, like what the past 20 years have been in their lives, And so people try to be very close. Also, you'll see a lot of Turkish people, they'll try to, form closer communities in different cities that they are. And it's a very similar thing that you'll see for Kashmiris too. They'll be, at least once a year, they'll try to meet on Eid. They'll do like a potluck and, all the Kashmiris meet. And I wanted to go over this one. So again, going back to the younger people, I call this slide the opportunity lost. So the 2 pictures from the left are Kashmir, the 2 pictures from the right are Denver. I got to live in Denver for 2 years, and I was able to see a striking similarity between the 2 places. Denver obviously is one of the best places in the world to go if you're into sports. They alone, by themselves, have, like, if they were their own country, which they're not looking for freedom, but if they were their own country, they would be number 7 in the world in terms of number of Olympic medals won. There are that many Olympic medalists in Denver. And it's definitely an opportunity lost for Kashmir, because Kashmir has some of the best environments for athletes. It's, high altitude. It has all this all this potential land for infrastructure, and it looks pretty much the same, but just that one is occupied, the other one is free. And so, like me, just like many other cousins I have who, got an opportunity to snowboard. Oh, thank you. We see this as an opportunity that we lose, and so we were so passionate about learning to snowboard so that we could one day potentially snowboard in Kashmir, where there, isn't like all the safety put in place, and so we'd be on our own essentially because of the lack of infrastructure right now. And there's a lot of lakes and rivers and peaks that are, that could have brought Kashmir as, like the Switzerland of the Muslims, like what do you want? Freedom. That's not something that you would want to teach your kid. You would want to teach them about beauty, about nature, but the kid can't even speak, and you teach them like hum kya chahte, azadi, which is like, what do you want? Freedom. And they can't even speak, but when they hear what do you want, they like put their hand up, signifying freedom. And if you looked at everything that I showed you, there's so much potential. There's so much humanity. It's not just war. In fact, so every Kashmiri is pretty involved in the Kashmiri struggle. There are a lot of Kashmiris who will try to stay away from speaking about Kashmir, and that's usually out of fear of prosecution, getting their passports taken away by India. India does a lot of crazy stuff like that, putting pressure on their family back in Kashmir, sending them to jail. But there was a time around 1990 when the Kashmir freedom movement was at its peak. And the world used to collect money to send for donations for the people who could be hungry. And there were a lot of people who the money was for, and they literally said, like, we don't really need money for food. We just want freedom. You can send this money back. Because people had so much integrity. They knew that, yeah, they're poor compared to the rest of the city, but they had enough food. They just wanted the future for their kids. And, I mean, if you look at Syria, what happened in Syria, these people, they were really happy and proud. They were doing so well. But out of nowhere, this explosion of oppression and, all these missiles and now they're like all over this world. They're begging people for freedom. They're begging people to help them, and similarly, like, yeah, we are in such a good situation, but like, we really ask you guys for support. We really ask you guys to help us. And so, like, what can you do? Just social media, tell your friends about it, tweet. There's some hashtags, take a picture, tweet it right now, because countries, just like the apartheid movement in South Africa, there were blacks being discriminated against, but because of economic pressure, South Africa changed its policies. And so similarly, non-violently, a lot of people over here today can make a difference. I'm not saying to boycott Indian products, maybe you should, but like, economically talk to your representatives and just like, you can really help us that way. And last but not least, obviously you guys can make dua and ask Allah to help us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Samir. We're coming to the end of the program, so if you can bear with us for a few more minutes. I'd like now to invite Sister Shagufta Lone, and she will be talking about Kashmiri cuisine. That's my kind of topic. We're getting close to the food, so this is an opportune time to talk about the food in Kashmir.
And it's also marriage.
Marriage, yeah.
Yeah, it's married. And
you have 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I won't take much time. Assalamu alaikum. It's actually painful to talk about, fun things these days, because it's like every day we are like crying. So, but I'll still try. So, marriage is a very important part of Kashmiri society, as other Muslim societies. So, yeah. So the important things about our society are like building a house, having a house for ourselves, educating children, and marriage and Hajj. These are the main, where most of the resources are spent. So marriage, I'll tell you how marriages start in Kashmir. So there is a middleman or a middlewoman. They go from house to house in the neighborhood, and when they find marriageable kids, so they find what are their requirements, and then they share with others so that they can get a match for them. And then, so most of the time, kids are asked about, and they talk. Earlier, it was more managed by parents, but now it's more managed by kids, which is a good thing. But with the help of parents. And then engagement happens, and sometimes marriage contract called nikah happens at engagement time, but most of the time it happens on the marriage day. So on marriage day, in the daytime, the nikah, the marriage contract happens, and most of the time it is like by lawyers, not in front of each other. I don't know what word you would say for that. So, and then the marriage is for nearly 7-8 days. The ceremony is for 7-8 days. So first is henna or mehndi night, where bridegroom's family and bride's family, they put on henna. And then is the marriage day, and in the morning the people from a boy's family come and they do to girl's family and they do the nikah there. And then there is a very lavish lunch called wazwan. I think you have videos of it over there. And in the wazwan, as usual, relatives and friends eat. Both in bridegroom's place and bride's place, they have that food. And then bridegroom comes to bride's place to take her, and he has his dinner there. So he also eats lavish food there called wazwan. So, and this marriage is for 7 days actually, sort of. What happens, for 7 days the bride is treated like the queen, and there is a special place for her to sit. And people, important people of the family and friends, they come and have lunch and dinner with her, and gift her and all that stuff. Then, in one of the 7 days, the girl, the bride and the bridegroom go to visit, what's it called, girl's home, like bride's home, with the family and friends. And they again have lunch there, come back. And on the 7th day, the bride's family is invited, and their families are invited to bridegroom's home. They have their lavish, again, dinner there, and then they take the bride with them for maybe about 15 to a month, 15 days to a month. And then finally they go and get her from there, and then she becomes a part of a family. But this family system is, what's it called? I forgot the word, like living together, what's it called? Like a joint family system. So they live in a joint family system. And then she becomes part of a family and runs errands as usual as anybody else. So that is mostly how marriages happen. Then I talked to you about wazwan. Let me tell you a little bit about wazwan. Wazwan is a food which is prepared by special cooks of Kashmir. And it has basically, like, more than 7 types of meats are served there. And it is cooked by special cooks called wazas. And it is mostly lamb meat that we use in Kashmir. And in that, some meat is cooked in yogurt, and some is cooked in milk. And the special spices that we use in our cuisine, even if it's maybe it waza or simple food, we use foods like fennel seeds, we use saffron, dry ginger, cinnamon, cardamom, and then other spices that are in India and Pakistan, you know. But these are little different ones, the ones I told you. And its food is not that very spicy as we find in, like in Pakistani restaurant or other Indian restaurant. It's a little less spicy, but yeah. So, okay, then I want to tell you how we sit down and eat. We sit down on the floor, even now, on the carpets. And first, it's called tash and nari. It's like a, what's it called? It's a container with water, and there is a, we have it there. We have put it for the display there. It is a movable sink. So people, a young man comes around and he gives water to everybody so that they can wash their hands. And after that, we sit down on the floor and we eat food. It's a big plate for 4 people. So the main food is rice. And, the main food is rice. And then there are different types of meats on it. And we 4 people eat together. And you don't get to choose who will eat with you. Whoever is next to you, like in Salat, whoever is next to you prays the same way, you can end up eating food with anybody. And so that means, okay, that is the wazwan, how we eat. And then common foods are like, yeah, lamb is the main part of most of the foods. But the different vegetables we have is kohlrabi, collard green. These are very like traditional foods of Kashmir. And lotus roots. These are like different than rest. And we have fishes from the lakes. And all these vegetables, we cook them with the meat. And yeah. And then teas. One of the tea you had was kahwa. Kahwa is with saffron, cardamom, green cardamom, and sugar. And then there's another type of kahwa, which is with cinnamon, cardamom, and sugar. And that is very good for cold and other things. And it is like, we give it to our little young little babies to old people. And we here also keep on drinking that throughout the year for keeping our throat and everything good. And then another one is called, which you guys are familiar, is called pink tea. But pink tea is a little different. This is the pink tea over here, but it is actually salt tea in Kashmir. We do not put sugar in it. We only put salt in it. We may add nuts and coconuts and other nuts to it, but most of the time our tea is salt tea, and usually only Kashmiris take it. And it's said that the Mongols, they also take it. So maybe it came from them or from Kashmir to that. And but Pakistanis take that tea with that's okay. The Pakistanis take that tea with sugar, and they call it pink tea. Like I went and drank it, I couldn't drink the sugar one. So that is more of it. And what else? Yeah. I wanted to tell you a little bit about samovar, which is there. These teas we make in samovar. Samovar usually was from Samarkand, Yarkand, and all that area. And it has two holes in it. In the middle hole, you put the coal in it. And the outer, you put water and spices, so that, you keep on adding things like in these big thermoses. But it was a very old thing, and it used to go like that. Thanks. The food which we are serving today, we don't have any restaurants here, so we are not able to do that. So we just try to talk to the restaurant people and try to make something similar, but it's no match, I can tell you, with Kashmiri food. Inshallah, we should try to make some wazwan here. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. So there is a business opportunity for those of you who want to open a Kashmiri restaurant. You can consult with these sisters. Also, if you look at the four areas we have talked about over the last 4 weeks, Bangladesh, we've talked about the Uyghur, Kashmir, and also the Rohingyas, the other common ingredient seems to be rice. Every single meal seems to be rice, and with the Kashmiri, sugar seems to also be a common ingredient. So you've learned a bit about the food. Inshallah, in about 5 or 10 minutes or so, we will have an opportunity to taste some of that food. So we're coming to the end of the program. We have a couple more renditions, and we'll have a song now by Brother Imtiaz Ali.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I'm really sorry, I know it's very late. So basically I will try to, you tasted kahwa, you may taste Kashmiri tea and other foods. So now you just taste something different. I'm going to give some rest to my brother. I know he's very tired. So I will sing in basically it's a Kashmiri song. I will give you just a glimpse of idea what actually it says, the poet. It's a Sufi song, mystic. The song is a spiritual Kashmiri song in which the poet laments and prays to God that the times are not in my favor, but I am still fine with it as I journey to you. It's basically a poet, he talks with song, it's a Sufi song. Then he congratulates to the person who is known as Zahid, Ibadat Guzar, who prays day and night with the glad tidings of Jannah. Then poet says, O Iblis, towards Shaitan, O Iblis, you have lanat from the beginning. Doesn't matter even Hazrat Adam was thrown out of Jannah. It's basically a song like, it's a spiritual song. So I will just continue with it. Zamanai pokn hamdam toiti kya go. Zamanai pokn hamdam toiti kya go. Temis gai zulf barham toiti kya go. Zamanai pokn hamdam toiti kya go. Mubarak zahida jannat sin. Mubarak zahida jannat sin. Mubarak zahida jannat sin. Methavin sui jahannam toiti kya go. Temis gai zulf barham toiti kya go. Likhit iblis si azlai chalanat. Likhit iblis si azlai chalanat. Likhit iblis si azlai chalanat. Nebar yud drav adam toiti kya go. Temis gai zulf barham toiti kya go. Bishartas peth gazalak bozna vai. Bishartas peth gazalak bozna vai. Bishartas peth gazalak bozna vai. Tnai sa zasme dikhsam toiti kya go. Temis gai zulf barham toiti kya go. Zamanai pokn hamdam toiti kya go. Thank you very much. I just made it short.
Thank you very much, Brother Imtiaz. Brothers and sisters, before I also want to say takes a lot of effort before and also afterwards in trying to make sure that the place is returned to some sense of normalcy. So I want to say thank you, Brother Farhad, in particular led this effort from the Islamic Institute of Toronto. And Brother Farhad does a lot of work in the education sphere without much recognition, and I'm sure he's probably cringing in his seat as I mention his name. But I want to say a special thank you to Brother Farhad and his team for the tremendous effort they have exercised, not only this year, but every single year. And beyond Islamic History Month, Brother Farhad has been a bedrock of support and an educational institution in itself in trying to promote the IIT since its inception in 20-odd years ago. I also want to extend a special thank you to Brother Mamoon, Brother Abdul Rahman, Sister Shaliza, and her team of volunteers, all the brothers and sisters who were involved in childcare, setting up, putting up posters, cleaning the place before and after, and also all the community members from the various communities who have assisted us in making this program a success. I want to also mention that a program like this takes a fair amount of financing to run. And as you know, the Islamic Institute of Toronto relies on your support to help us realize our dreams. So I'm asking you, if you find it in your heart, to kindly support the institution and leave a donation for us before you leave. We rely on your support to make these programs success and also to continue the other programs that we have. I also want to encourage you to visit islam.ca, register to receive our newsletter, and you will also have access to all of our programs on our website. Also, a special thank you to Devin. He has been with us, helping us to provide American Sign Language to our brothers and sisters who are deaf. We are indebted to the work Devin has been doing with us, and we also feel very privileged to have the opportunity to serve our deaf brothers and sisters. This is about inclusion, and the Islamic Institute of Toronto, I say it with all humility, has been at the forefront of trying to include all our brothers, all our sisters, all nationality, all linguistic orientation to make this institution a reality. And last but not least, brothers and sisters, I want to say a special thank you to Dr. Abdullah Hakim Quick. I mentioned to you at the beginning of the program that Dr. Abdullah Hakim Quick has been a strong supporter of programs like this, and he brings to us a unique set of skills to help us realize the practicality of these programs. And what you see tonight is a manifestation of his vision. So Sheikh, we are eternally indebted to you, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to bless you and give us the ability to benefit from your tremendous knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also take care of your health, and we hope inshallah that you will continue to be a pillar of support for this community. And as a very small token of our appreciation, I'd like to present to our dear Sheikh a certificate of recognition and also a small token of our appreciation. This is in no way is replica of the work that he has done, but at least it symbolizes and demonstrates our appreciation for the tremendous work that Sheikh Abdullah Hakim Quick has done to this community for decades. So brothers and sisters, on behalf of all of us, I'd like to present this to our dear Sheikh and to wish him the very best and to thank him for the tremendous support he's provided to all of us. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah Hakim. And brothers and sisters, we are coming to the end of the program, and the final speaker is a spoken word, and this is Sister Banish Ahmad. If I can ask the brothers and sisters who are at the back, and sisters, if you can kindly sit until the program is finished, it would actually show some amount of respect for the speaker. So if you're lining up at the back, please take a seat, inshallah, and afterwards you can line up, and we will make sure that we conclude the program very quickly. So I'll invite our Sister Banish to provide us with the last rendition.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can you hear me well? Clap once if you can hear me well. Clap twice if you can hear me really well. And clap 3 times if I'm speaking too loud. What a night. I actually am really tired, but I am so happy and joyful for being able to share Kashmir with all of you. Alhamdulillah. Before I share the poem, I want to just tell you very quickly, there's a global solidarity vigil tomorrow in Scarborough, at the Scarborough Town Center, right in front of the pond at 6:30. It's happening in cities across the world to show our support to the Kashmiris who are suffering, who have been silenced and repressed. So if you can, join them and join us. There's also another one happening at Mississauga Celebration Square, if you're in Mississauga. So here we are. This piece is called A Reflection on Art and Activism, Coloring Resistance. It was published earlier in the summer this year. You can Google it and find it under Feral Feminisms, which is an academic journal. Okay, so here we go. Resistance to me is glitter. It's sparkle, it's shine, it's happiness, it's love, in spite of all the hate. of the violence of suppression and oppression. Resistance is alchemy. It's making use of the fertile light of joy to produce gold. Resistance is making something from nothing. It is planting seeds of intent to bloom in stinking dung. It is converting shit into beautifully scented, colorful, blossoming flowers. It is noticing that shit, stinking dung could be a fertilizer. Resistance is not seeing mistakes as failures we cannot survive from. It is seeing mistakes as openings for miracles, as rich opportunities, as possibilities for accountability, for learning and teaching moments. Resistance feels joyful. It's silver, it's gold, it's blue, it's purple, green, pink. It's colors getting to know each other holistically, informed by a decolonial praxis, moving beyond the boundaries of state-sanctioned curriculums and corporate media strategies. Resistance is colors bleeding into each other, adjusting for opacity, layering one another, allowing each other to shine, complementing, contrasting, not competing or erasing each other. Resistance is non-conforming, complicating but not confusing. Resistance is blending powerfully. It's birthing and creating new colors but also standing out separately. Resistance to me looks like a woman's body, birthing a child during a war, making room for life in a time of looming death, where time is treated as money and your net worth is reduced to your productivity, the supposed worth of your time. Resistance is pausing. It's taking deep breaths. It's slowing down, refusing externally imposed pressures. It's noticing what the body needs in the moment to bloom, to survive, to thrive. Resistance to me is relations that are shoulder to shoulder and not hierarchical. It's ways of relating that are simultaneously mindful of unequal and deep wisdoms held in unique ways by conventional and unconventional knowledge bearers. Resistance is refusing disconnection from our land, from our body. It's giving consent and revoking consent. It's demanding redress for wrongful exploitations and violations. It's self-representing. It's self-governing. It's self-determining. Resistance is colors being radical and seeking justice. It's colors collaborating. You'll have to just give me a second. Resistance is colors collaborating, coexisting, creating magic. Resistance is colors being alchemy. Resistance to me is colored bodies loving all the parts of us that no one wants. Resistance to me is a healing love. Resistance is glowing as if we are dancing in love. It is being a boundless love. It's firing, tasting, treasuring, radical imaginaries, radically restorative imaginaries. Resistance is holding space for my beautiful life, my body, and those bodies who have been willed not to survive and thrive. Resistance is a critically conscious, angry body. It is a reflective longing. It is nurturing a sustained critical awareness, a practice of self-education, a practice of radical self-preservation and self-love. Resistance is striding with a raw, grounded strength which refuses the gaze of others. It is a colorful resilience. It is glowing shamelessly and unapologetically. Resistance is being here right now. It is being alive. Thank you so much for listening, for your patience. I just want to conclude with expressing my gratitude to the IIT team here, to all of you for being with us, and to the Kashmiri community members who have shown up here to share their community, their culture and their history with you despite what the conditions we're in. I ask for your solidarity and Jazakallah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Binish. I just want to say that we don't often censor any speech that comes here, but some of the language may have been offensive, so I'd like to apologize to those of you who felt that some of the language may not have been appropriate. I also want to say, finally, I am very, very grateful to all of you for coming out this evening, and I want to say thank you. I hope, inshallah, you will join us next October, inshallah, so we'll see you next year. And I want to let you know that we have a number of food stations, so if you can line up and you can participate in some of the Kashmiri food. Subhanak Allahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal 'asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah. Jazakumullah khair.